These are the top Sun Devils entering the 2024 NFL Draft.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day and making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your podcast. Stay in touch with the show by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today. You'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. And on today's edition of the show, we are going to be taking a look at the top Sun Devils that are in the 2024 NFL Draft. Keep in mind, there's a lot of graduate players that have moved on from this team for one reason or another. Unfortunately, not every single player is going to make it to the NFL. And this group of 5, plus my honorable mention, I do think have a chance to at least make a practice squad or make some kind of impact at the next level. I think that out of these 5 we're going to talk about, I think 3 of them should definitely be drafted. 2 of them should be priority free agents, in my opinion. And I mean, admittedly, I am biased because I got to watch these guys play, and they were a lot of fun to watch, and they had very good impacts at Arizona State. So it's naturally going to be a little more difficult for me to be able to turn off my personal bias with these guys. But we're going to go ahead and talk about these guys. I got them ranked from who I think has the absolute best chance to who I think is still going to get an opportunity, but not as big an opportunity as number 1. We're going to go from honorable mention to number 1. So we'll start with my first honorable mention, and that is Dee Ford. Now, this past season, Ford really stepped up into a huge role for Arizona State. He practiced very well during training camp and everything, but when push came to shove, he ended up starting for ASU. Not just starting, but he was an outside boundary corner for the team. And by the end of the year, there was a lot of rotation with like Edmonds was coming in. But Dee Ford was the starter for the beginning of the year and got a lot of very important reps in. And keep in mind, this is a 5'9", 180-pound corner who's on the boundary against receivers who are 5'11", 6 foot, 6'1", however tall. And he was able to play pretty well. And was he perfect? No, of course not. No corner is, though. I mean, even the best corners in the league still have their bad moments. And Dee Ford played as well as anyone could have expected. And I would tell you, he even exceeded expectations last year. Because I don't know that we went into it assuming that Dee Ford was going to play, let alone as big a role as he ended up playing for the team. Because he felt like a second string guy, a depth piece. But when the first depth chart came out for us in week 1 against Southern Utah, and you saw Dee Ford was starting on the outside, you were like, okay, hold on. You got my attention. You had my curiosity, but now you have my attention. And he played well. In a season where there was a lot of transition because of a new defensive coordinator, because of a new staff, there was going to be a lot of growing pains, and Dee Ford provided a veteran presence for the team to be able to come in and help make that transition at least a little bit easier. And I think he succeeded in that. So Dee Ford, just outside of my top 5. The reason why I think he might not get a fair shot is simply because of his size. You don't have very many 5'9" corners that get to play significant time in the NFL unless you are like a beyond elite guy. And even then, it's still difficult to be able to carve out any kind of niche at the next level when you're just physically limited. It's not a Dee Ford problem. It is a problem from the from the physical traits that he has. And he's still an athlete. I mean, this is still a guy who can bump and run. He's just limited by the size that he can't control. Into the top 5 now. Number 5 for me, Chris Edmonds. And Edmonds is somebody that I have been very high on the last 2 seasons, and I think rightfully so. He has been one of the strong points on the defense. He's been a really good tackler. He's had some good coverage moments for the team. And this past season, he was second on the team in tackles with 71. He has 121 tackles over the last 2 seasons. He recorded 3 interceptions last year, did not get any this year, but there really were not a lot of interceptions, period. But he's got some things that are going to play into his favor that I think will get him a chance to go to a practice squad team and a chance to be able to compete. The first thing is size. Unlike D Ford, he's built for the NFL. He's 6'2", 215. He's got good speed. He's got good ability, and he to me looks like somebody that NFL teams covet. And who knows if that's going to end up sticking, if that's going to end up being true. But I definitely look at Chris Edmonds and I say he's got a chance. And I think if he had recorded even 1 interception this past year, let alone 2, 3, 4, 5, he would be talked about more. Especially because prior to Arizona State, he played 3 years at Stanford and he was a ball hawk. In his 3 years there, he had 8 interceptions. Dude finds his way around the football. And last year for ASU, his first season, he had 3. He just finds a way to the ball. He's a ball magnet. Again, this year he didn't have one, but that's hardly his fault when you consider the circumstances that were placed around this team and everything that he had to battle through and everything that everyone next to him was battling through. Chris Edmonds looks like a next level player. Now, is he? I have no idea. There's, of course, warts to his game because despite being the size and the build that he is, he would still be getting a lot more draft, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, he'd be more noticeable for teams, and he'd be invited to the Senior Bowl and the Combine and stuff like that. But he is not a name that almost anybody knows outside of Tempe. And even in Tempe, I feel like there's a lot of people that are casual fans who don't know who Chris Edmonds is. And it's a shame because he is a more than quality player, and he's somebody that I really believe did not get nearly enough recognition that he rightfully deserved in his time at Arizona State. Very quality player. I don't know if he's going to get a chance for one reason or another. I personally think that when you have someone that is of his size and has his ability to be able to make plays, he should get at least an opportunity and a tryout to show teams what he's all about. And there's a lot of guys on the Sun Devils team that should be able to get those opportunities, right? And again, I can totally admit that I am biased and I am looking at it through rose-colored glasses because these are the guys that I got to watch play at my alma mater and the program that I cover. But you still can't find guys that are built like Chris Edmonds that are able to do the things that he does. That's where I think he absolutely deserves an opportunity. Now, there's 4 more guys that we're going to talk about here in just a second. We're going to hop into my next 2 guys here, 2 veterans on the team for the team last year. Give me one moment. We'll get into it. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Passion, drive, patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. And check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and Amazon Fire. Stay up to date. Every league, college, pro, any sport. The combine's going on right now. Check that out. We'll actually be talking about the combine a little bit tomorrow as well. So stay tuned for that one. Hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get that update. Back into our conversation, taking a look at the next two Sun Devils that I believe definitely deserve an opportunity to audition themselves for the next level. The first one is Tre Brown. Brown came in from Washington State in a part-time role where he was rotated a lot for the Cougars and wasn't highly productive and wasn't someone that you brought him in and you were like, oh my God, this is the guy that's going to turn the defense around. But man, was he pivotal. He was so important to what the Sun Devils did for their defense last year. First of all, transitioning to a new defensive coordinator was always going to be difficult. But Brian Ward, who came from Washington State, brings Tre Brown, who came from Washington State, and Tre was able to help get guys, young guys, veteran guys, accustomed to a new defense. And with that, Arizona State went from what was a mediocre at best defense in 2022 to a pretty dang respectable unit in 2023. And the future looks bright for 24, 25, whatever, as long as Brian Ward is still at this program. That's huge for the team, but I find a hard time believing that they would have been able to successfully do that without the presence of Tre Brown. That alone, with the leadership qualities, speaks out to me. He had solid production, 53 tackles last year, 49 the year before at Washington State, a half sack last year, an interception that he returned for 32 yards. And the funny thing about that was in the post-game conference when we were talking to him about it, he was like, yeah, I'm not my early 20s. I can't run the way I used to. And for somebody that's closer to 30 than they are 20, I definitely had to have a laugh because I was like, yeah, I'm not beating you in a race for sure. But good production. Someone who does a little bit of everything for you. He's able to crash the line. He made plays in the backfield. He was able to be a more than quality player in coverage, but he was a really good leader, and he was able to call out the things and the audibles and everything for the Sun Devils defense. He was very important to the unit. Again, if he's not there last year, I don't know how well you are performing in 2023, especially with a new scheme, especially with so many new players. I mean, they brought in tons of edge rushers and tons of linebackers and tons of defensive backs. Like, the whole roster was just overhauled with so many new faces. And Tre Brown was arguably the most important one of those faces because he was able to guide those guys. He was able to steer everybody in the right direction. To me, that speaks volumes about character. And the NFL does care about character. They do want guys that are going to be good locker room players and leaders by example. Tre Brown's got that experience. That's where I'm impressed with him. He's got decent size at 6'2", 245. So he is built like a traditional linebacker, but he's not the fastest guy in the world. He's not the freakiest athlete in the world. And that's where the NFL may not be as interested, is because he's not someone that you would expect to test out of the gym. That is, right, wrong, or indifferent, going to be a huge difference maker for the NFL, because there's plenty of guys who are good leaders and guys who have above average production. But the difference is some of these guys are running 4.3. Some of these guys are, having a 12-foot broad jump. I don't know, man. Like, there are guys who are just freakier athletes than Tre Brown, and he gets a short end of the stick because of that. I still think he deserves a chance at a minimum. To me, he's somebody that should get a workout. Now for the top three. These three players, I believe, should be drafted. These three players are guys I expect to make a practice squad. These are three guys that I feel very confident that they can find a way to make it to the NFL. With Brown, with Ford, and with Edmonds, while I do think they deserve a chance, the odds are against them. These three, I think, have the best chance. We'll start with number 3, and that's Joey Ramos. Joey Ramos was injured in week 1 of 2022. He came back in 2023, plug him in at right guard, and he was a starter. He got banged up, just like everybody else did. The whole offensive line was in shambles because of injuries. And yet Joey Ramos continued to play. And that was mind-blowing that this guy who has been dealing with injuries over the last couple of years, and it might have even gone to Iowa State before he transferred here, is still giving it his all and finding a way to get onto the field. And he's playing with a club on his hand, and he's moving positions. They moved him from guard to tackle because they absolutely needed somebody to be able to fill that spot. That's crazy to me. And was he elite? No. Was he terrible? Not even close. He was more than good. He was a very quality player, and he was somebody that showed the versatility, showed the grit, showed the toughness to be able to audition himself in the next level. And with Joey Ramos, I also view him as just a good leader. In the same breath as Trey Brown, I mean, Ramos was a 5th year, might have been a 6th year player. I think he was 5th year because he did have one more year of eligibility when I talked to him. And guys gravitated to him because, again, it was a team that was going through a lot of changes because of the new coaching staff, because of the new coordinators, because of all the transfers that were coming in. And the offensive line had a lot of movement. I mean, you had, short of Isaiah Glass, you had brand new guards, you had a brand new center. There was nothing but changes along the offensive line. But Ramos came back, and he was able to be that guiding light for a young unit, for a unit that was just unfamiliar with the program and the expectations and what the new coaching staff wanted and the new scheme. All of it. And yet Joey Ramos was able to really step up. For an offensive line that had next to no expectations last year. You can go back to my videos last year. I was not big on the offensive line, and I was very critical of the offensive line. Absolutely will own it. They played a lot better than I thought they would when you consider the circumstances. Yeah, there was a lot of pressures. Yeah, the quarterbacks got knocked down a lot. Anybody would behind an offensive line that was just rattled with injuries. But guys stepped up. And Joey Ramos stepped up bigger than anybody else on this team. Played through injury, moved positions, was the leader of the offensive line. Yeah, Joey Ramos absolutely is a next level player. The versatility for him is key. The comfortability that he has to be able to move. Like, you can say guys are versatile till you're blue in the face, but sometimes they just can't make a transition from tackle to guard or guard to center or whatever it is. Like, there's so much of a mindset that goes into playing offensive line that I don't think people realize, because a lot of people will easily say, oh, well, you just move them to guard, or you put them on the right side of the offensive line instead of the left. And it's not that easy for guys. It's not just plugging these guys in. It's a whole different style of movement. It's a whole different area of finesse that they need to learn. Like, you're talking about muscle memory when you're getting off your set, and suddenly that's changing. But with Joey Ramos, he was able to do it at a pretty decently good level. Like, was he elite? No, but man, did he blow away expectations. He blew them away. He played so much better than I thought he would, and that many others thought he would. I will absolutely own that I was incredibly critical of the offensive line. And one of the reasons that they were able to play better than the injuries would allow them to be was because of Joey Ramos, someone who was consistent, someone who was able to move around, and someone that was able to rally the troops. He deserves a chance to get to the next level. I think that he should get drafted late because of the versatility. Will he? I don't know. The draft is a crapshoot, man. But I will tell you that these last two guys, one of them, I'm in the same boat with Joey Ramos as they should be. And one of them, I feel like you can almost guarantee that that player will be able to get drafted. And we're going to talk about him in just one moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. One more time, I appreciate you guys for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. Wherever you get your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. We appreciate you guys as always. Like I said, tomorrow we are going to be talking about Sun Devils in the Combine, but particularly future Sun Devils in the Combine and guys that I think could dominate the event. So tune in. We'll be talking about that tomorrow. Let's round out the top prospects for Arizona State that I think have the best chance to either get drafted or just have the best chance to make an appearance at the next level. Number 2, Deshaun Mallory. Deshaun Mallory transferred in from Michigan State and was asked to play the Nesta Jade Silvera role, the DJ Davidson role, as the interior guy who's not necessarily your nose tackle, but you need him to be able to maneuver along the defensive front, be that versatile player that plays in a three-point stance with a hand in the dirt and is violent and is able to help control the line of scrimmage and make life easier for the linebackers and the other defenders and keep their jerseys clean. That was the role that Deshaun Mallory was asked to come in and do. And he did it. And he did it very well. 48 tackles, 26 of them solo, 2 sacks. He actually batted down 4 passes for what it's worth. He made plays in the backfield. And keep in mind, this is not a position that Arizona State is accustomed to getting sacks from. So 2 sacks might not sound like a lot, but that's pretty good when you consider the expectations. Again, he was not asked to be a pass rusher. He was asked to control the line of scrimmage and make life a little easier for everybody else. Take on the double teams and just not give up any ground. That was his job. That was his role. That was what was asked of him, and the opportunity that he was presented, he seized it. He was one of the most consistent players on the defensive side of the football. Guys had their lumps all year. Deshaun Mallory, I feel like there was not too many speed bumps for him. I feel like if you look back at the season, you will see far more good that came out of Deshaun Mallory's play than bad. Consistent, reliable, dependable, whatever word you want to throw his way. There was also some decent leadership qualities. I don't think that he was nearly as outspoken as some of the other guys, but there's no doubt that a senior who's coming in for their final season of college is going to be able to help lead some guys. Like I said, I couldn't tell you because I just not in that locker room. I don't know if Mallory was a rah-rah guy, but he definitely commanded attention along the defensive line. And he's got a good build. ESPN lists him at 6'1", 275. I think he's a lot closer to 290. So he's more than big enough for his position. Is he a little short? Sure. But he's very strong, and he's someone that is very difficult to move off of his spot. He deserves a chance at the next level. And I feel like he should be a late-round draft pick in the same vein that Nesta Jade Silvera was, because he is still more than good enough to get that opportunity. You compare him and Nesta, I think that Mallory performed the same expectations. And Nesta definitely played a lot more shade nose tackle than Mallory did this past year because you had CJ Fight on the field with him. But I nonetheless looked at Deshaun Mallory in the season he had, and I called it successful. The last guy I want to talk about, relatively obvious, not just from me, but for anybody who is familiar with the program. Number one, Ro Torrence. Torrence is the lone Sun Devil that is representing the program at this week's combine. He is absolutely built like a next level player at 6'3", 200 pounds. And the 2 seasons he played at Arizona State were masterful. This guy, you want to talk about bump and run and being able to line up one-on-one with a guy and take him out of the game, and he could. 2022 was an unreal season for a guy who was transferring in from Auburn and was not a full-time starter. But yeah, he came in and he seized a role in training camp, and he never looked back. He was terrific in 2022. 2023, a little more up and down. There were some good moments. There was definitely some bad moments. There were plays where he just flat out got beat. But again, like I said with D Ford, that's going to happen to any guy. The difference between Ford and Torrence is about 6 inches in height. Torrence is significantly taller, and that's something the NFL cares about. You don't find very many 5'9" corners that are starting, but you're a 6'3" corner and you got people's attention. I mean, that's absolutely going to be a very good ploy for him to advertise himself at the next level. And the NFL agrees, which is why they gave him a combine invite compared to everybody else, as they looked at Ro Torrence and they said, yeah, you stand out to us enough that we want to extend that opportunity, and we want to see if you truly are someone that we can draft. But at a minimum, I will guarantee he is a priority free agent. I will almost guarantee he's a practice squad guy, and I feel very confident that he's going to be on an NFL roster. But I don't see any way he's not drafted. There's clearly some kind of attraction to him by the NFL. There is really good tape that backs him up. And this is a guy who is just physically built the way NFL teams want their defensive backs to be. And he is a good corner. He has the skill to go along with the physique. That's why I think that you look at Ro Torrence and you go, yeah, this guy has it. This is a player that we feel confident in spending draft capital on, developing behind the scenes, and seeing if it works out, seeing if he is able to take that next step and if he is able to become a true NFL player. But the tape is there, and the size that you can't teach is there. If he has a strong combine this week, his draft stock is going to steadily improve. I absolutely view Ro Torrence as a draftable player. And I view him as somebody who deserves a chance in the pros more than anyone else. And I am a very big fan of all the guys I listed. But with Ro Torrence, it just feels really difficult to assume that he doesn't get a chance. I think we see him on the field. He reminds me of Chase Lucas in that he was someone who played very, very well for the Sun Devils, better than people expected him to. And although he was a 7th-round pick, Chase Lucas is still in the NFL. I think Ro Torrence can, at worst, be in that kind of situation. But he's very physically gifted. So as long as he's able to show off some athleticism in Indy this weekend, he feels draftable. Those are my top 5 Sun Devils for this year's NFL draft. I want to know who your guys' are. Do you think somebody's going to climb up that I didn't mention? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrads36, the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. Shout out my everydayers who are here every day, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Wherever you get your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. Again, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. We're going to be back again tomorrow as we take a look at Sun Devils that are on the current team who I think could dominate the combine next year or 2 years or 3 years, whatever. We're going to talk about those guys tomorrow, so tune in. I'll see you then. Till then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.